I'm drowning in my history, prisoner of past defeats. Tell me what the future holds. Tell me, baby. Terrified of things to come. Paralyzed, I cannot.
These abilities allow Shadowman to walk through lava, push hot blocks out the way, and even swim in acid. Getting these tats means that again you can go back and get Dark Souls that were previously inaccessible in other locations. There are also incentives to revisit the temples once again. Just like in every area in Deadside, there are Dark Souls that you will need to get that you couldn't get before. Weapons and items. What would an epic game like Shadowman be without weapons and items? Well, it has tons of them to find and use. Some are absolutely essential whilst others are optional, but each will make a journey through Deadside a lot easier and fun when it comes to dealing with the massive onslaught of enemies who litter each area. Shadowman's main weapon is of course his Shadow Gun, which increases in power and strength the more Dark Souls are collected. Blasting away enemies at the start of the game is pretty tough because again Shadowman just isn't that strong yet. Once you start building up a collection of Dark Souls however, then you will be better able to quickly dispatch your nasties and try and find more stuff. There's some fire based weapons which require energy to use, but they are very handy when you are outnumbered, and believe me, you will find that each location is chock full of the undead. It can become a little bit overwhelming. There's a shield which when used will make Shadowman invulnerable for a short period of time, and even a secret weapon called the Violator which is hidden somewhere in the game. Shadowman must also find specific key items to help him get further. After reaching the asylum for instance, you will start to notice these metal mechanisms which require some sort of device. You will need to find the engineer's key which when used on these will open doors, unlock new areas, or even remove a barrier stopping Shadowman from getting to a certain Dark Soul. The asylum itself is huge and there's many different areas within it that seemingly get darker and more sinister the further you get. Among the many items, there's one called the Poin, which gives Shadowman the ability to climb up these bloodfalls and get those hard to reach Dark Souls, a bone-shaped drumstick which is used to bang on various drums throughout the game to break down barriers to get to hidden areas, and there's an explosive calabash that breaks through floors with a certain symbol, and a type of blade that warps Shadowman to different rooms or previously difficult to reach areas. So though this game is very long-winded, you do at least stumble upon many of these which reward your efforts somewhat. But what about Michael Aurora, I hear you cry? Well, he is heavily catered for with shotguns, machine guns and a rich generous amount of ammo to go with it. Later on in the game he will even get his hands on the flashlight, which I know doesn't sound very exciting, but given how dark a few of the live side areas can be, it's an absolute godsend. Once again, Shadowman can't use any traditional weapons such as the shotgun in Deadside, nor can he use the torch there. It is only when the player has found a way to bring the power of the Shadowman to live side can both sets of weapons and some items be used simultaneously. You will need almost every item to help get you all these Dark Souls, and again you will need to backtrack to previous areas to try and use Shadowman's new abilities and powers to get to a path you couldn't get to before. Returning to those areas when you're all powered up is such a great feeling as the enemies go down far more easier and a lot more rapidly. I will say that I do feel that every location in Shadowman can feel a little too maze-like and a little too tough and larger at times. Often you'll come to a fork in the road and going one way might just drop you back into an area you've already been to, and you will probably have to retrace your steps. Luckily, Shadowman allows you to save your game at any point in the game instantly. This was an absolute godsend and I found myself doing this constantly. I would also reload my file as it's sometimes quicker than actually having to make my way back to the same place if I made a mistake. So you're blasting enemies, collecting Dark Souls, eventually you will make it to a central hub point, which is of course Jack the Ripper's Great Cathedral of Pain. It is here that all 5 of the killers and the souls that Legion has chosen reside and provide a bridge from Deadside to Liveside. Each schism that Shadowman accesses allows a passageway to Liveside where each one is held. 3 of the serial killers are in different prisons and are using their newly acquired dark powers to kill guards and fellow prisoners. The remaining 2 can only be found through very long levels and are extremely confusing and require a wee bit of puzzling to figure out. So it's just a case of visiting each schism, travelling to Liveside and taking them out, right?
Hey there, brother, yo! What's happening, my man?
Where the hell?
Hey, Yank! Hey, so, brother, it's good to see you. Come a long way for the party, but hell, it's gonna be worth it. I'll see to that.
I haven't come for a party, mister.
Can't back out now. Clock's ticking and your number's coming up. And it's a Mark 5 verse 9 and Echo Foxtrot, shall we dance?
Hey, you! This is private property. What the hell you think you're doing, boy?
I ain't your boy.
Don't you get uppity with me. You trespassing on my property, I can call you anything I choose, boy.
I didn't see no signs, fatso.
That's 'cause you didn't arrive by the front door, did you?
I don't need an invitation, fat man. I've been sent here by a higher power.
I'm the only power around these parts, boy. You gonna find that out soon enough. You gonna find out what survival is all about. Just like...
Well, not quite. This is where the huge twist in the plot occurs, and probably the one reason a lot of gamers would switch off Shadowman at this point. Why is this? Well, remember how I said how Michael Lara can't use his shadow powers in Liveside? This is true. At first, you only have access to 2 of the serial killers, military maniac Milton Pike and Marco Cruz. The other 3 require a further puzzle piece each to open. So once Shadowman travels to Liveside to fight the first serial killer, he turns back into Michael Lara. This means he is human and no amount of pummeling will kill them. Even with the guns and ammo, which again can be generously collected, they won't make a dent. Plus the killers taunt poor Mike, and so you have no choice but to walk back to Louisiana to ask Mama Nettie for advice.
Nettie, I've found out how the 5 reach this world, but when I cross over from the asylum, it's always daytime, Liveside. And I'm going to need my powers as Shadowman to truly kick their asses. Maybe I should just hang back and wait till nightfall, which ain't easy, 'cause the 5 are after my blood.
No use hanging back, Mike.
Nettie then tells you of an ancient blade of legend called Let Eclipser in Deadside. If Shadowman can find all 3 pieces of Let Eclipser and bring them back to Liveside, Nettie is able to assemble it and perform a ritual on him, which will cause a permanent eclipse, and this means that night time will fall in the Liveside areas, and this will allow Michael to become Shadowman in Liveside.
Okay, Nettie, I've got me all 3 pieces of L'Eclipse, so work your voodoo magic and bring on the night.
Sounds like a cue for a song, but this ain't no musical. Give me the blade. Lay down, Mike.
I thought you'd never ask. Is, this gonna hurt much?
Yes.
I thought so. Try and be gentle with me.
Bringer of night, L'Eclipser, release the shadow into the world of men.
This, I believe, is the first major hurdle in the game, and even I will admit it's a real test of one's patience, perseverance and mental stamina to get your hands on the whole thing. This means going back into those areas, grinding and harvesting as many Dark Souls and powers as you can, and also trying to get some gads. It's easy for me to say this, but once you get the knife, the game properly opens up. I did find myself doing everything I could, even playing to stupid o'clock in the morning, and can definitely relate to the struggles that some players find themselves in when trying to get the knife. I would wander to and fro to the last coffin gate each time I had a few more Dark Souls, just begging it to let me in. I would also revisit areas, get completely lost, and would have to refer to an FAQ to try and earn enough souls. It's a bit of a strange analogy, but Shadowman I can best describe as rolling a small snowball up a very large hill. As you get higher, the snowball gets bigger and heavier, and it becomes more tiring. Once you get to the top, however, the ball is big enough and stable enough for you to ride all the way to the bottom of the next one. So once you have the knife, then the game really starts to open up, and you can see that all the hard work you have put in, which felt a little bit pointless, is finally beginning to pay off, and the game becomes easier and more logical to understand. I was cursing the developers whilst getting that Eclipser, but I actually understood why Acclaim T-Side had decided to structure the game in this way, and it makes a lot of sense to throw this barrier right away. However, each one of the serial killers are surprisingly easy to take down, with Jack the Ripper being the hardest out of the 5. One of the most annoying stages, however, is Avery Marks' New York apartment complex. In Liveside, Shadowman has to climb what seems like an endless set of platforms and rooms at night with broken floors to get to an attic to finally hunt him down. Not only are there broken floors which send you plummeting to the bottom, but it's a huge maze littered with corpses, unsettling sounds and disturbing images. The last of the 5 is Dr. Victor Betrarian, who is causing chaos in a Texas prison where he is being incarcerated. There's a lot of puzzling to do here as the level is very large, and without a keycard, Shadowman can't even access the rest of the prison. So it's really cool that although you're this undead warrior, you still have to use traditional items to get further. Whilst this level was pretty enjoyable, it did drag on a bit too long for me, and I got a little bit tired of the headless corpses getting up to attack me constantly. I did however enjoy the cutscenes with Michael and the killers exchanging insults.
May I help you? What I meant to say was, is there something I can do for you?
Yeah, there's something you can do for me.
And what is that, pray tell?
You can get the hell out of my way.
I'm afraid that won't be possible.
Hey, anything's possible, Doc. You, above all people, should know that. I'm sorry, did I call you people? My mistake. You aren't a person at all, are you? Are you?
Don't tell me you're expecting some kind of answer to your rhetorical question.
So, after finally taking all the serial killers down and getting their dark souls, Shadowman must again forge on to try and find Luke, who briefly appears in the Asylum engine block stage. The passageway to where Luke is blocked off by these pistons, which have to be shut down to progress to get to Luke. Unfortunately, you have to warp into the serial killers' locations to locate prisons, which takes Shadowman to unreachable parts of the engine block, where each location has a further piston room, where once the necessary fluid levels are set in a particular way, this will shut down that piston and allow Shadowman further progress through the engine block. Luckily, however, in Jack the Ripper's stage, he should be able to easily find his journal, which gives a very detailed account of the plot, and also because he designed and built the asylum, he also has the solutions to the piston rooms. Once all the pistons have been shut down, then you get a final showdown with Legion himself.
Who are you?
My name is Legion, for we are many. The immortal power that you seek does exist. It does indeed lie within the soul, but only within certain ones, certain dark souls.
My God! What are you?
Now, I haven't mentioned Legion mainly because throughout the game he's never mentioned by name. There are no scenes with him or Shadowman at all until the end of the game. So once again, Acclaim I think wanted to keep him as far away from Shadowman as possible to add once again another layer of mystery. Again, he appears in the opening cutscene to Jack the Ripper, but we never see him visit the other serial killers, which again was another wise decision. Some might argue and say, well, he's the main villain, he should have been featured more, but again, I feel it was better off keeping the player in the dark. I did find another complaint that people had was over Michael's brother Luke, and that he only ever briefly appears in the game, and that storyline isn't really expanded much. Again, to me, this was absolutely essential that Acclaim did things in this way. I mean, think about it, you're already tied up with finding Dark Souls, Let Eclipser, and the various other voodoo items and weapons, and having Luke constantly in the game would have been too much to focus on. Trust me, when you get to the end of the game, you will see exactly what I mean and why the events play out like they do. Trust me, when you get to the end of the game, you will see what I mean and why events play out like they do. Okay, so this next part will contain spoilers pertaining to the end of the game. If you don't want to know what happens, then please use the timestamps provided to skip ahead to the final section, where I'll give you my final verdict on the game.
Amen to that.
Shadowman finally catches up with little Luke, who has been giving him the runaround.
Luke, there you are. What you doing running away like that? Luke, speak to me, kid.
Hiya, Mikey. Glad you could make it. I've been waiting for you. I've been scared they were gonna catch me.
Luke tells Shadowman that he's scared and he's been waiting for him. Shadowman then hands his little brother the teddy bear, and Luke indicates that he was being chased by creatures in Deadside who did unspeakable things to him. Then things take a turn for the worse as Luke tells his brother a sick joke, and it soon becomes clear that something isn't right.
Sorry, Luke?
Hey, you want to hear a joke, Mikey?
Sure.
Once upon a time, there was a murderer and his victim walking hand in hand towards some deep, dark woods. The victim squeezes the murderer's hand real tight. He says, looking up pleadingly with his big brown eyes, "I'm really scared, mister, of the deep, dark woods."
Luke, what the hell?
He sighs and he says, "You're scared? How the hell do you think I feel? I'm gonna be walking back through them on my own."
Pretty funny, hey, Mikey. Pretty goddamn amusing.
Shadowman realises that it isn't Luke after all, and that it is indeed Legion.
Congratulations! You win the booby prize. It was never your brother. Just a little insurance to get you here. Really, Michael, you must learn to let the dead rest in peace.
Who are you?
And he asked him, "What is thy name?" And he replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many."
Legion reveals to Shadowman that it was him who used the image of Luke to lure him deeper into Deadside to find all the Dark Souls for him, as it would have been too difficult for Legion to get them himself. Now Legion plans on finishing off Shadowman and taking all the souls, which will grant him and his undead army unlimited power as they cross the threshold from Deadside to Liveside. Legion declares that it was he who created the prophecy and spoke to the ancients to help shake it to his liking. Also, that since Shadowman handed Luke's teddy bear to him, which is his transport to and from Deadside and Liveside, now Shadowman is stuck in Deadside and cannot return home. To add insult to injury, Legion also reveals that he was the one who sent Nettie the prophetic dream, which prompted her to get Shadowman to find the souls for him. Naughty boy. Now the final battle begins. Shadowman must fight Legion, who has two distinct forms, the first being his Dark Destroyer human form. Legion, like Jack, will try and rush at Shadowman, however, having collected all the Dark Souls, all it takes is a few quick blasts to destroy his thin facade. Legion quickly realises that the power of the souls might prove to be too much for him, and quickly changes tact and becomes a nightmarish creature capable of locking onto the Walker Between Worlds with a nasty purple projectile. Add to this, Legion can follow quite quickly by flying towards him. You will need to try and keep Legion at bay by constantly blasting him with the Shadowgun. The problem is that Legion can easily wipe you out very quickly. The boss room is however massive, and a few advantages Shadowman has is that there is plenty of room to manoeuvre and even a few pots to replenish health if needed. I hated this battle, not so much because it is difficult, because it really isn't that hard, but that Legion's purple missile is deadly, and so in order to try and get it to disappear you need to do a lot of dodging. Now you can get a weapon called the Devastator in the game, which apparently makes this battle easier, but failing that you can still use your trusty Shadowgun. Basically, if you lose you get a bad ending and you have to reload the file and start the battle again. Here's how I beat Legion. I would run around the room and fire my Shadowgun at him, making sure it hit him. I would then save the game quickly. The reason I did this was because I didn't want to start the whole battle over and over again. I would hit him, save the game, and I would just do the same things over and over, rinse and repeat. This was a very slow, laborious strategy, but each time I would die, I was able to pretty much continue where I left off in the battle and hit him a little bit more, creeping towards ultimately beating him. After what seemed like a very long time, Legion finally succumbed to the power of the Dark Souls, and a cutscene kicks in where Mike gives the Dark Souls to Legion to permanently kill him.
This was the one flaw in your plan, Legion. The Dark Souls have given me the power to defeat you. I've read my prophecy, and Legion shall take the Dark Souls unto him. Well, here they are.
We then see the Dark Asylum disappear from Deadside, with a few funny lines from Jaunty thrown in for good measure. Shadowman escapes from the engine block and declares himself once again as the Lord of Deadside. However, Luke's teddy bear has vanished with Legion, and so he is permanently stuck in Deadside, unable to return to Liveside. Then the credits roll, and that's that. Okay, as for replayability, well, there are a few things you can do. I'm not sure if you need every single Dark Soul to kill Legion, but as long as you have destroyed all the pistons, you may be a little bit underpowered, but I think Legion can still be beaten. You could of course try and track down more to make Shadowman more powerful, which I definitely recommend, as having all 120 Dark Souls makes you incredibly badass, and not only that, enemies go down like a knife through butter once you have this improved power. Of course, there are also some secret optional voodoo weapons to find, and you can even scour the locations for more cadeau. For me though, I found almost everything and really felt that the game delivered, and sometimes over-delivered on many occasions. Shadowman is a lengthy, well-told adventure that offers hours of gameplay, and this is one I would definitely replay, if only to marvel and appreciate Acclaim T-Side's insanely underrated gameplay and plot. Okay, graphics. Shadowman on the PC offers a higher resolution experience, which really helps show off the unique dark graphical style. In fact, the whole game takes place in many dark, nightmarish locations with lots of disturbing imagery, particularly in the many asylum locations, which feature a lot of blood and wailing enemies. As I mentioned earlier, Shadowman uses a game engine known as Vista, which allows for huge locations that Shadowman can traverse through. I think at times the areas are impressive, and again there's hardly any problems with draw distance or fogging. It's clear to see that Acclaim have worked really hard to ensure that no two locations look, feel or even play alike. The artwork is of a very high standard, and I don't think gets the recognition it deserves. There's the huge, barren, dark wastelands with winding paths and secret routes and switches. You have wailing enemies firing projectiles at you, duppies and zombie mothers, as well as some winged creatures which can be a real pain to take down. The game is very bloody and introduces the claret often, particularly when taking down enemies, when opening coffin gates in the path of shadows, and even when using retractors to open schisms. It really works and helps Shadowman to distinguish itself from other games at the time. Michael Larat and Shadowman look very detailed and are very well animated. Many have complained about the slow swimming animation, which looks a bit weird admittedly, but again it feels like it belongs somehow. The lava and acid effects are bright and distinctive, and the further you get through the game, the more disturbing the areas you unlock. After finally gaining access to Avery Marks' New York apartment building, I found it extremely dark and almost every room had corpses in it to freak the player out. I was bricking it as not only was it dark, but I needed to find a flashlight to navigate my way around. Also worth mentioning are the individual temples that Shadowman has to visit. Every one was distinctive, large and impressive, with hidden paths and traps to overcome. Plus the GAD effects when Shadowman would earn a new one were awesome, as were the many cutscenes, dialogues and interactions with his character. Admittedly, this game is 20 years old, and so some of the mouth animations don't match what's being said. However, that's only a small minor detail which won't cause any real concern due to the excellent script and fantastic work from all the voice actors. Whilst there may be other versions of Shadowman across a few platforms, I found this one to be the best looking game when it comes to graphics. Gameplay. Now this is one area which I feel might throw off some gamers, as trying to follow the structure of it can be quite confusing. Shadowman has many gameplay elements which need time for the player to adapt to. As I mentioned earlier, anyone casually playing Shadowman for the first time might just think it's just another copycat platform game. It's easy to make that assumption due to, again, 3D platform games being pretty much all the rage in the 90s. What with Crash, Spyro, Mario, Lara Croft and even Bubsy all being great examples. In fact, the first area inside Deadside looks like a typical first level you would expect in these types of games. Now, Shadowman involves a lot of platforming admittedly, but again is meshed with large open areas, much bigger than any seen in most games I've ever played. Shadowman is pretty much again this huge Metroid Zelda adventure with these platforming elements thrown in. Although you can run, jump and attack, shimmy and climb the platforming style, each area requires that you search for Dark Souls, and revisiting previous areas to unlock more paths as you become more powerful is essential. Plus the game throws a lot at you, once again pushing you ever so further forward, and this is probably why many players switched off. You have to manage blasting enemies whilst navigating tough levels and trying to get the right items or puzzle pieces to make progress. It's not always a simple linear affair, and does demand a lot of patience and commitment from the player. I will say that yes, again, this game is massive and very confusing. Half the time I was going forward and I hated it because I was trying to get used to the last area that I was on. I couldn't understand why the game was just throwing way too many obstacles at me. Also, some areas such as Dr. Batrachian's Texas prison section and Jack the Ripper stage were way too long and could have easily been cut down a little bit. Whilst Jack the Ripper's London Underground stage is virtually devoid of any enemies at all except for a few dogs, Batrachian stage has way too many undead enemies and, just like the Sisters of Blood, becomes really boring. So these were my only real complaints with the gameplay itself. To get through Shadowman you need to really hang on and just give the game some time to open up. It does become easier and enjoyable once it clicks with you. Everything is wholly achievable though, and does start to make a lot of sense about halfway through when you get La Eclipsa. However, if there is anything I hated about the gameplay, it was two things. The first, once again, being the Sisters of Blood in the temples. I just found them really annoying, and I get why they were there, but felt that they were just a really overused gimmick. Plus, almost every room is littered with them. There were enough sisters here to make me wonder whether their father was some kind of jackhammer, especially when Shadowman is weak. The sisters can quickly drain your health, and it becomes really annoying. However, this is countered with the fact that if Shadowman dies, the damage he does to the enemies remains, and so he can just carry on from the last teddy bear warp point and take them down little by little. My second problem is that sometimes this game is too cryptic for its own good. Mom and Nettie and Jaunty don't really help you out too much. All you're really told is what to get but not how to find it. You can go back and see them, and different conversations will take place the further forward you get, but in many ways you truly are on your own, especially after working your ass off to get the La Eclipsa blade. Nettie finds herself so tired after the intense ritual she falls into a coma. I just think she's lazy. After all, I've been running around Deadside for countless hours trying to get through a very stressful long experience, gathering dark souls and moving in circles, and Nettie is the one who is tired? Blimey, Charlie. Shadowman is pretty much a game that has its own unique gameplay style, and though you will die 1,000 times, the more you play and collect the necessary items, dark souls and power-ups will indeed make you stronger. I would recommend using an FAQ when playing, as this will once again help reinforce some sense of structure. It is a unique game that won't always hold your hand, but over time you will come to appreciate the gameplay style and exploration that is required. Controls. Now, these are some decent controls. Shadowman is best played, in my opinion, with a standard joypad, but for all you keyboard aficionados, I do believe he can be controlled that way if you so desire. Shadowman does support both analog and D-pad control, as I mentioned earlier, which is a godsend in my opinion, as I really struggle with twin stick gaming. Also, in addition to using the joypad, you will have to use the tab and escape buttons on the keyboard in order to access the inventory screen, select weapons and items, and of course to save your game. Shadowman controls are just fine, with only really a few minor complaints when it comes to jumping. I do find that Shadowman squats a little as he goes into his jump, and it just doesn't look right, and although it's serviceable, it doesn't also feel very fluid. Using weapons, however, is no problem, and these are dual welded and can be assigned to either hand, tipping the odds a little more in your favour. Again, some people say the Z targeting lock breaks too easily, and whilst I do agree with this point a little bit, once again I do feel this was necessary to try and create a sense of realism and challenge. In fact, I don't think I used the Z targeting once during my whole playthrough. Generally you can just aim at a baddie anyway and hit them 95% of the time. I also want to say that I didn't encounter any slowdown issues either as I was controlling Shadowman. As this is the PC version, it really does the game justice and allows for greater appreciation of both light side and dead side. Sound and music, well, they get a 10 out of 10 for me. This is one of the best sounding horror video games ever made. The score is vastly underrated. The unsettling music really helps to build this unsettling feeling of dread as you explore the many areas Shadowman has to offer. The opening music as you start up the game is just as familiar as Mario's theme for me, and is instantly identifiable, and although there was only one other Shadowman game made 4 years later in 2002, which I will be reviewing in the future, It couldn't possibly be any other game whenever I heard this music. The Cathedral of Pain is another highlight for me again, not just visually but also it's got this religious chanting which when combined with the screams and sounds of the many enemies made me incredibly tense as I tried to figure out how to use the schisms to warp to live side. Also, despite the asylum playrooms driving me crazy as I tried to grab every Dark Soul there, the messed up psychedelic childlike fusion of piano and screams summed up my experience perfectly. So from what I've just discovered, especially what I've just said, Acclaim have made sure that both the music and sounds stand out, but that they also mix with the sound of Shadowman and his enemies. When Shadowman takes a hit, he grunts and there are a lot of distinct sounds, such as when he dies in lava or acid. Also, just walking around on different surfaces, you can tell that again Acclaim went above and beyond to create a rich, imaginative, unique experience. The cutscenes once again are excellent, from Legion and Jack's exchange, which especially caught my attention, to Shadowman talking with Nettie and Jaunty. The voice actors knocked it out of the park, with Mama Nettie once again being my favourite character in the whole game. She's mysterious, kind and firm, but believes in Shadowman. Then of course once again there's the Irish Jaunty who guards the Marrow Gates, and he's played for laughs and to inject a bit of humour into the game. And I loved it how when Shadowman would try and sound mysterious or dark or clever, Jaunty would kind of make light of him, and the two have great chemistry despite being very different from each other. Okay, my final thoughts. With that, I have to wholeheartedly recommend Shadowman for the PC. It is one of the best video games out there, offering not only value for money but also a lengthy adventure that combines some of the best video game genres together, but dares to stand out and do things in a totally different way. I would even go as far as to say that it's right up there and it's just as good as Orcarina of Time, and that's no exaggeration, as I'm sure Shadowman warping to both dead side and live side is a definite wink and nod to that game. If any significant flaws can be found with Shadowman, it's just that some areas are too large for their own good, and the further you get into the game, the more cryptic it gets. Again, I do recommend making use of a walkthrough or FAQ to help ease this somewhat. The locations and routes to some of the inaccessible Dark Souls will drive you nuts, and so you will have to fully explore every single area, as again it's easy to miss a switch or secret passage that you were not able to find first time around. However, this is balanced with a hefty dose of adventure and reward, as in your struggle you will stumble across items and weapons frequently. Yes, Shadowman can be a frustrating game at times, and some levels are a little too long, but having played through the whole game and found every single Dark Soul, the experience is worth it as you become seriously overpowered. This gives you carte blanche to stick into the many hazards awaiting you in dead side and live side. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's easy to look at Shadowman and perceive it as just another bog standard platform game that you've seen it all before. I wholeheartedly, however, recommend giving it a chance, and even when the game gets confusing, just keep playing. The further you get, the more enjoyable it becomes. At the time of recording, I picked up Shadowman for just under £4 on Steam, which is the price of a cup of coffee if you're going out. If you're looking for something a bit different, darker, bloody and atmospheric, then grab yourself a copy now, turn off all the lights, cancel all appointments and be prepared to play for hours in order to become the Lord of Deadside.
I'm drowning in my